Watch. When you picture the Mary Celeste, what do you see? Most likely the image painted by 100 cheap thrillers. A dark silhouette in the fog, tattered sails whipping in the wind, signs of bloody struggle on the deck, and maybe a giant squid dragging the last sailor into the abyss. All of that is gripping fiction, but it's a complete lie. The legend of the Mary Celeste is the most successful fake in maritime history. And tonight, that is not the story we're going to tell. We're going to investigate. We'll show you how dull port records, weather logs, and the chemistry of denatured alcohol tell a tale far more chilling than any myth about pirates. This isn't a story about monsters. It's a story about how a chain of small, logical choices and a single fatal accident can erase 10 souls from the face of the earth without leaving a single trace. The truth hides not in the screams, but in the silence. And that's what makes it so much more terrifying. December 4th, 1872. The Atlantic, somewhere between the Azores and Portugal. Captain David Morehouse commands the Dei Gratia. He spots through his spyglass a ship under strange sail. It's heading his way, but weaving, uncertain, as if drunk. For hours, Morehouse watches, signals. No answer. By sunset, alarm reaches its peak. This isn't just a ship in trouble. This is a ghost ship. He makes an entry in Dei Gratia's ship's log, the one that would form the basis of his later report. Brig Mary Celeste sighted, no signs of crew, sails badly set. Ship appears deserted. He sends his first mate to board. The sailors climbing the ladder have no idea they're about to become the first witnesses in a mystery that will have no suspects, no motive, and no solution. They find an empty deck, and the only sound is the creak of rigging. Sinister silence in the heart of the endless ocean. When Mary Celeste was brought to Gibraltar by Morehouse's crew, the world exploded. 19th century newspapers followed the same rules as today's tabloids. They craved blood, and they got it. The headline screamed of mutiny. Drunken sailors slaying the captain, his wife and young daughter. The centerpiece for reporters, the captain's sword found in the brig's cabin. They quickly claimed it had been drawn and dripped with blood. It was simple. It was horrifying. And above all, it was irresistible. A story of mutiny, despair, violence, the birth of the cursed ship legend. Everyone was sure the answer was obvious: a brutal killing. But as the official inquiry began, all these beautiful and terrible stories unraveled at the first touch of fact. Attorney General of Gibraltar, Frederick Solly Flood, a methodical, thorough man, allergic to tales of sea monsters and pirates. He trusted only the facts, and the facts slowly began to tear the newspaper version apart. That blood-stained sword sent for examination. The verdict, no blood. Just ordinary rust mixed with lemon juice the captain used to polish his blade. Flood's team tapped every inch of deck and hull, searching for signs of a fight, axe, or saber marks. Result: 0. The official report: no evidence of violence or struggle on board the vessel. For the public, a shock. The story lost its villains. If there were no pirates, no mutiny. The mystery only grew deeper. Where could 10 people vanish from a perfectly sound ship? So let's go back aboard and look with an investigator's eye. Captain Briggs's cabin, not a scene of violence, but a still life of quiet daily existence. An open Bible on the table. Near it, his wife Sarah's sewing machine, a child's little dress left unfinished, interrupted mid-stitch. In the corner, a harmonium, where she likely played most evenings. On the shelf, the captain's pipe, as if he had just knocked out the ash and was about to refill it. All around, the toys of their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. In the galley, perfect order. Enough food and fresh water for half a year. All of this screams just one thing. These people did not fight for life. They lived, and intended to keep living. This is the strangest crime scene in history, because there is no sign of a crime, Only an inexplicable absence, as if 10 people were gently erased from the picture with a single stroke. On every ship, the main document is the captain's log, and the Mary Celeste's log gave investigators nothing, except even more questions. The last entry was made on the morning of November 25th, 9 days before the ship was found. Captain Briggs, in his careful hand, recorded coordinates, weather, clear, and course. Not a word about problems, impending storms, or crew descent. Business as usual. On the slate for draft notes, the same date. That was the last day anyone wrote aboard the ship. Entries end on a note of complete calm. This transformed the case. It proved if disaster struck, it came suddenly and without warning. There was no storm. The crew was not sick. That morning on November 25th, 10 people aboard the Mary Celeste were certain their voyage was going perfectly. Then, history's pages were torn out. With the mutiny theory debunked, Prosecutor Flood tried another angle. Finding no outside villains, he named the crew as culprits. His report painted a drunken orgy. German sailors, which for a British prosecutor was already an aggravating factor, breaking open the alcohol casks, drinking themselves into madness, slaughtering the sober captain, his wife and child, then escaping in the lifeboat. Sounds like a bad pirate movie, right? Not only was this theory weak, it was absurd. Picture it. The sailors stage a knife fight, commit triple murder, then, before fleeing, tidily clean their cabins, organize tools, and carefully close every hatch. A desperate stab at blaming someone when facts pointed to what every investigator dreads. No suspects, no motive. But while Flood spun his tales in Gibraltar, the ship itself quietly refuted them. The main witness in the case was the Mary Celeste's hold. When it was opened and the cargo inventoried, investigators got a surprise that killed the drunken riot theory for good. All 1,701 casks of denatured alcohol were accounted for. Not one had been opened. Seals intact. The crew hadn't just skipped the drunken orgy. They hadn't touched the cargo at all. This was a crushing blow to the official inquiry. The facts were stubborn. No fight, no pirates, no drinking. The ship, fine. Cargo, fine. Crew, sober professionals. The inquiry hit a dead end. All the easy, comfortable explanations crumbled to dust. And in that void, outlines began to form. The beginnings of a much stranger, more complex mystery. While everyone searched for signs of chaos, blood, broken things, smashed casks, the main clue pointed the other way, toward order. And it was not something found, but something missing. From Captain Briggs's cabin, his navigational instruments, the sextant, and, most importantly, the ship's chronometer, were gone. To most people now, that's meaningless. But for a 19th century sailor, it changed everything. The chronometer, those ultra-precise longitude clocks, were the ship's most valuable tools. To leave the ship without them, suicide. You don't grab them fleeing a sea monster in blind panic. You take them only for one reason: an organized evacuation, with plans to navigate the open ocean by yourself. That tiny detail flipped the investigation. The crew hadn't fled in horror. They left the ship in an orderly fashion. Now the burning question: what could make a veteran captain order evacuation from a sound ship into a tiny lifeboat in the vast Atlantic? Let's recap the facts. No signs of struggle. Valuables untouched. But the navigation instruments are gone. All this points to not a panicked flight, but a planned, if hasty, evacuation. Yet that conclusion draws an illogical picture. Imagine Captain Briggs, a responsible, experienced sailor, on a clear day in mid-ocean aboard a seaworthy vessel with 6 months' provisions, decides to put his crew, wife, and 2-year-old daughter into a tiny boat. A boat that, in the Atlantic, is like an eggshell. Why trade safety for almost certain death? Whatever threatened them aboard the Mary Celeste must have seemed scarier than the ocean itself. What could that be? What could persuade a captain to leave his only home for 1,000 kilometers? When human factor theories collapsed, one suspect remained: the cargo. And here, forget alcohol as a party drink. Mary Celeste was carrying not rum for celebrations, but 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, a toxic, volatile chemical headed for Italian industry. In essence, a floating chemical bomb. In a wooden hold, even a tiny leak could create an explosive vapor mix. Leaks were more than possible. Later analysis found 9 casks made from red oak, which, unlike white oak, is porous and breathes, releasing vapors at temperature shifts. The crew lived and slept on a powder keg, and possibly Captain Briggs at some point realized this. That's the most logical, coherent theory today. Let's piece together the puzzle. Step 1. Due to heat and porous barrels, vapor builds up in the hold. Step 2. Briggs, smelling it or just suspecting it, orders the hatch covers open to vent the fumes. Crew from Dei Gratia, indeed, found them open. Step 3. Something pushes things over the edge. Perhaps a sudden boom, a pop from pressure and vapors. Not a full explosion that would destroy the ship, but a loud, blunt shock wave. Step 4. Scientific panic. Briggs, potentially convinced the cargo is about to blow, chooses what seems the only rational option: evacuate immediately into the lifeboat, but not to flee, to move away at safe distance on a long tow line and wait until the threat passes. This perfectly explains everything: the missing instruments, the lack of panic, the fact of evacuation. Let's assume for a moment that this scientific panic theory is correct. The picture forms. Briggs, fearing explosion, evacuates everyone to the lifeboat. He does not abandon ship. He ties the boat to a long towing rope, perhaps the main cargo hawser, stretching hundreds of meters. They sit adrift in that little shell at a safe distance, waiting for the alcohol fumes to clear. The plan looked cautious, reasonable. They controlled the situation. But in that instant, fate turned catastrophically. Had it all gone as planned, they would have waited an hour, rowed back, and Mary Celeste would have arrived in Italy. Her name unknown, her story forgotten. But they did not return. Their one lifeline to the ship, a single tow rope, snapped. The plan failed. The safe evacuation became a death sentence. Picture those final minutes. 10 souls in a lifeboat, rocking on relentless Atlantic waves, watching their ship. Suddenly, the weather, their old enemy, shifts. A squall, or one rogue wave. Mary Celeste, her sails still partly raised, catches a gust, jerks forward. Hundreds of meters of rope become a taut wire, an explosive crack of snapping fibers. It's over. The lifeline is gone. For those 10 in the lifeboat, pure terror. Their ship, their home, their last hope, begins to slip away with the wind. They row desperately. But what can a lifeboat do against a wind-driven brig? In 10, maybe 20 minutes, Mary Celeste's masts shrink to a speck on the horizon. Then nothing. And then the true silence arrives. 10 people, alone in the endless Atlantic. The broken rope theory feels dull, too logical for such a legendary mystery. That's why people invented grander tales. Giant squid attacks. Jules Verne's Captain Nemo was just printed, so krakens were in vogue. Or the Bermuda Triangle, though Mary Celeste was found thousands of kilometers from it.
Why let geography spoil a good story? Or the modern staple, alien abduction. Maybe the aliens desperately needed industrial alcohol and took the crew as consultants. These versions are thrilling, make for great films, but reality, like always, is more prosaic and more terrifying. There's nothing worse than the thought that what killed you wasn't a mythical monster, but a plain piece of rope. The mystery was strange enough, but in 1884 it became legend thanks to Arthur Conan Doyle. Before he gave the world Sherlock Holmes, he anonymously published J. Habakkuk Jeffson's statement, the supposed account of the sole Mary Celeste survivor.
He changed the name, invented a vengeful passenger who led a racial conspiracy, slaughtered the crew, and sailed the ship to Africa. Total fiction, but the public believed every word. This bloody, thrilling, and entirely false story spread everywhere, burned into collective memory. Irony. The man who created the world's most rational detective also spawned the most irrational theory in the history of Mary Celeste. And what of the ship herself? After 1872, her legend only grew. Mary Celeste was repaired, returned to service, but her ghost reputation haunted every owner. In 13 years, she changed hands 17 times. No one wanted to keep a ship that brought only misfortune. One captain died suddenly aboard. She suffered constant calamities, only losses for her owners. Her end was ignoble. In 1885, her last captain, seeking insurance, deliberately wrecked Mary Celeste on Haiti's reefs. Her cargo a heap of rubbish, old boots, and cat food. But even here, the curse struck. The fraud was uncovered. The captain, ruined, convicted, died in poverty. Mary Celeste dragged him under too. Most marine disasters have an end, a desperate log entry, wreckage, bodies that tell a tale of struggle. With Mary Celeste, there is no end. The key document does not exist. No farewell note from Sarah Briggs when sealed in a bottle. No last confession from a sailor washed ashore. Nothing. The story of 10 people simply stops. Their voices fade out the moment they step into the lifeboat. And it is this emptiness, this open end, that makes the mystery immortal. It leaves a void our imaginations try to fill with pirates, monsters, aliens. The crew didn't just die. They were erased from history, no last chapter. That's why, again and again, we come back to it, trying to write that ending. The scientific panic and broken rope theory explains almost everything. Elegant, simple. But even here, one splinter remains. The ship's pumps. When inspected, one was dismantled, parts laid out neatly on deck. Why disassemble a pump mid-ocean if the ship was sound? And if it wasn't, why didn't they all stay aboard? Perhaps they chased a phantom problem, or the disassembled pump is the real key. A clue to something we missed. This tiny technical detail, like a thorn in the body of logic, reminds us we may never truly be close to the answer. It keeps the case alive and offers an escape for new doubts. So, what happened to Mary Celeste? Her secret endures because her mystery has no villain. It's the perfect crime because there was likely no crime at all. No pirates, no mutineers, no monsters. The culprits were nature and human fear. Physics turning alcohol into a threat. Psychology driving a captain to a fatal decision, trying to save his family. And the ocean, that impassive force that snaps lines and swallows lifeboats. The Mary Celeste case will never close. It stands as an eternal reminder that sometimes, for the greatest tragedies, no malice is required, just a chain of unfortunate events that takes 10 souls beyond the horizon, leaving behind only an empty ship, a silent monument to a secret the sea has kept forever. Thank you for watching.
And remember, it isn't always monsters we should fear. Sometimes it's the tide, the wind, and the choices we make when logic turns to panic.